Howdy, cowpokes. So, I'll do a quick video. I didn't even know they still made these. And this particular model, they might not anymore. But anyway, we're going to take a look at it. So, there's this brand. Everybody's familiar with Victorinox. They're ubiquitous with the Swiss Army knife. They're the Swiss Army knife. Except they're not. For the longest time, there were two companies that were able to use that name as the Swiss Army knife. There were two competing companies, both Swiss. Everybody knows Victorinox, but for the longest time, there was a company called Wenger, remember. They pronounced the W as we would look at that and say Wenger. They would pronounce it Wenger. And it was Victorinox and Wenger, and both of them made Swiss Army knives. Some of those still exist today, even though over time, Victorinox became the bigger company, had more money, and they ended up buying out Wenger, but they still incorporate some of their former knives from the Wenger factory. It's still made in the Delamont factory into their product lines. Now, they may put their name on it, but knives like this is the S57, I think. This is, while it may say Victorinox on the blade, it is also showing Delamont. This is actually made in the old Wenger factory, and it still uses most of the Wenger features. Now, sometimes they do update and mix and match. They have the Victorinox style can opener as opposed to the older Wenger, but they do still, at least in the watches and some of the other stuff, they do still have their own corporate identity. Victorinox is the parent company. This is the child company. As far as the knives go, they all pretty much carry the Victorinox name now, and they've got the Victorinox logo, but some of them are still the older Wenger designs. Some of the large, I don't have it here, I think it's in the other room, but the one-handed opening where you push the logo, and that's the lock for the blade, some of the big ones, like they still make some of the Wenger knives, they just have the Victorinox label on them. So there were two companies, now there's basically one. However, I happened to find a Wenger watch on Amazon, and then I researched a little bit and realized, oh, they actually still make them, and they still make them under the Wenger name, and they're still Swiss made. They haven't outsourced to China or anything like that from what I can see. And so I wanted to try one, because I do have a Victorinox. This is the Field Force. I think it's a 42 or 43 millimeter. And it is a great watch. Really nice band, very clean, very Swiss Army. These things go for about $485. So just under the $500 mark with tax and shipping and stuff. So not a cheap watch, but affordable and very nice. Exactly what you would expect from the company that makes these. Victorinox is now officially the largest knife maker in the world as far as units made and sold. So anyway, I wanted to take a look at the Wenger watch. So this one is called the Seaforce. So you got Field Force. This is the Seaforce. Why? Well, you might have already guessed. It's going to be a dive style watch. Now, I got this one off Amazon. They had one in blue. They had one in black. They are $199. I got it up through Amazon Prime for $199 plus whatever the sales tax was. So just a little over $200. So less than half the price of that. And I was like, you know what? It's still got the Swiss Army knife logo. It's got the Wenger name on it. 200 meter water resistance. It is a 43 mil case diameter. It's 11 millimeters thick, so it's actually fairly thin. It says here that the bandwidth is 18 millimeters. I think that is wrong because this is a 21 and that looks slightly thinner. I think this is a 22. I think that Amazon's actually got that wrong. Which of course now makes me wonder about the rest of the damn specs. Yeah, see, I'm looking on the Wenger site. Okay, let's go to the other screen. I'm looking over here. You can't see. It's a 22 millimeter, so my eye measurements, eyeballing it were right. But it is a 43 millimeter, and everything else is the same. So, okay, cool. So, and it says a Swiss movement. Now, everywhere I looked, it doesn't say what the movement is. It just says Swiss movement. So I'm going to assume it's probably like a lower or mid-range Ronda movement. This is the chronograph version, by the way. And that's why I brought this one out, because I've got my Luminox, which is not Swiss Army knife. It's not associated. You'll never call it a Swiss Army knife. But it is, I think that these guys were heavily influenced by Victorinox and the Swiss Army design when they came up with their stuff. So in no way do they have the legal right to say anything about Swiss Army. Their whole thing is about, Navy SEALs and whatever their marketing shit says. But there are similarities between these two watches. I don't know. They might even be made in the same factory. Who knows? Not sure of that. I'm just guessing. But anyway, so this one uses a Swiss movement. I'm going to assume it's just a basic Ronda movement that you see in a bunch of the watches. I looked on the back. It does say Swiss made. It's got the Swiss made engraved in it, and I think it has to be made in Switzerland to be able to say that. Nothing I found at anything online on their website or anywhere else has said anything about being made in China or outsourced. So it looks like it is, in fact, a Swiss watch. It does have the same quick disconnects so just like your rubber watches have the quick disconnect, I can go here and push in those pins and boop, pop this out and change the band if I want. Now, what do I think about it? It's got a decent weight to it. It looks pretty good. I don't know why the start-stop of the chronograph is silver and that is black, but that is a black enamel. It's not, and it goes all the way around on the pusher, so it is not a sticker on the outside like a protective film. It came, in a basic box. I've already sized it for myself. The manual, instruction, warranty card, all that stuff is in the bottom. I had to take out 3 links to get this to fit properly on mine. So I took 2 on one on the other, and then I have it in the tightest setting so that I can loosen it just a little bit if I need. But for me, this is about perfect. I've got 7.3 millimeter or 7.3 inch wrist circumference. So anyway, fairly thin for a bigger watch. It is a 43. That may turn some people off. For me, as I've said every time, 42 to 40. 42 is the smallest. 43, 44 is the sweet spot for me. So here it is on the wrist. Fits comfortably. The weight is nice. And part of that is it's heavy enough. It feels solid and substantial. But it's not that heavy. And this is probably the only negative I'm going to say on this thing, is that these are hollow formed links. They're not solid steel links. But that does make it not as heavy as a watch this size should be. And to look at it, you don't see anything from this side. It's only when you go and you look on the inside, you can see some of the seams and things where it's pressed and put together. It uses a simple push pin, so it doesn't have the collars like this one, so it's easier to work with. Some people prefer screws. Unless you put on 50 pounds or lose 50 pounds, you tend to set it once and forget it. So I've never been one of those snobs that cares about whether it's a screw versus a pin and collar versus a pin. The pin and collar can just be a little tricky because if you lose the collar or the collar falls out, then the pins don't work. And so I actually prefer just a plain pin. This one does have a milled clasp. I'm sorry, it has a stamped clasp. The same as this one. In fact, they look... Shit, those could have come from the same factory almost. When you look at the Victorinox, you're going to have, obviously, again, costing more than twice as much. You have a much nicer, a little thinner, narrower, I think a little more classy, a little more upscale looking, even though they're sort of similar. Just the way this one's polished, more in the center, it just gives you a little bit of a two-tone effect. And obviously having a really nice milled clasp with the extra added safety of click. So it makes it a little more fussy to get your thumbnail in there to open it up. But this on the wrist is a, it's a nicer, a little more upscale looking, little more premium feeling watch. Not gonna lie. And it's surprisingly light. So I'll take back what I said about, the weight. These are hollow, but because these are narrower, a good bit narrower, there's actually this watch, and because the watch itself is a little smaller than this one, they actually weigh about the same. So the hollow, if this had full steel links, like heavy duty solid links, it would definitely be heavier than that. But it does look nice. I mean, once it's on your wrist and you're not seeing the seams of the links, I mean, you take a glance at it and you go, I mean, it looks fine. There's not a lot of, there's a little bit of wiggle side to side. I would say, a little more than what you get here. These links are definitely tighter fit. There's a little more flex here. That bothers some people. For me, it just means when my wrist moves around, there's a little more movement. Now you might hear the more rattle. So again, that's going to turn some people off, but you're talking about the watch itself, they feel comparable, right? This one looks a little nicer, a little cleaner because it doesn't have the bezel, so you get a bigger dial. But honestly, that little bit of flex and it would be nice if it was solid links. I mean, some of the $120 Paganis do have solid links, but it's a very nice secure clasp. They do a good job there. That clicks in nice without being overly tight where you're busting your fingernail getting it open. And that little bit of flex does make it actually very comfortable, but it's not pulling into the hair on my arms or anything uncomfortable. You can almost hear a little bit of course, if it was tighter, you wouldn't hear that. So I've got just a little bit of looseness in there, and that's about where I like it. I don't like it pinching and cutting. I feel like it cuts off the circulation. So let us do a lume check. So let's put on my little, what is this? This is the Olight S2R. This thing is so stupid bright. That's not even the brightest. That is. And that, geez, I just blinded myself just from the damn reflection. This thing is so freaking bright. Turn off. So the lume, it's okay. It's not overly bright. I think if I had done that on this one, I would get a much, yeah, you can see the difference on the brightness of that lume versus this. So, for the lume, it's okay. I mean, it'll work for a little bit. Maybe if I charged it for a little longer. But it's not great. I would say it's definitely lesser. It's all right. Not all that bright. Don't know how long it'll last. Lume's never that important to me, honestly. At night, I tend to take my watch off when I go to sleep anyway, so I don't wear a watch when I sleep. But it seems to fit nice. It is a screw-down crown. It is 200 meter water resistance. The pushers for the chronograph, however, are not. So when they say 200 meters, that is with the understanding that you will not be a chimp and push those buttons underwater. Don't do that. Don't be that guy. You will if you're at the bottom of the pool and like, oh, let me time my breath down here, and you start using those underwater, you probably will get water in there. And that goes for any watch. Yeah, that lume is still showing pretty decent. Anyway, as far as the bezel clicks, it is unidirectional. Don't know how many clicks. I'm not going to take the time to sit here and count them because I don't actually use dive watches for diving. I'm not dive certified. I jump in my pool. But I like the style. I think they're good, manly, sport-looking watches that you can wear on lots of different occasions. But as far as the clicks, really nice. Really positive. They lock right in place and they don't walk back at all, which is really nice. I will say they're not that grippy. You see what the texture is here, but there's no, like here, these are ribbed on the sides. So there's knurling all around the edge. This is actually, while it has bumps on this side, they're actually kind of smooth. It would be nice to see a little bit of knurling. Your fingers do catch on them here, but it doesn't give you as much grip. But that just goes and locks in place and really doesn't walk back at all. So very nice positive clicks. I would say it's right up there. Yeah, very nice. Very nice. I wish it was a little grippier. That's it. That would be really my only, critique so far. So you've got your hour. You have your sweeping second hand for the time is on the 2:30 or 3 o'clock complication. Down here at 6 is going to be your minutes. And then you've got, I think I need to set, do I need to set my date? What is the date? The 22nd? Looks like it's kind of, off. So is that, maybe I got my AM PM mixed up and it's gonna about to, because it's coming up towards 12. It thinks it's midnight. It's about to shift. I may need to reset the date on this. And honestly, all right. So when I looked at this yesterday and I was doing the size in the band, I thought this didn't have a date because I didn't see it between the 6 o'clock and that complication there. So let's go ahead and start the clock. Buttons are, fairly soft, tactile, no problems there. Click, click. And that should be your minutes up here. So I need to figure out what all these damn complications are. The problem is my lighting in my room. Hold on, let me use my flashlight. Let's turn it down to the lowest setting so I don't blind myself. There we go. So you can see it there a little better. So, okay, so up here, that's my minutes for the stopwatch. These are my seconds for the actual time. And down below is, I think that's my AM PM. So that's why let's see, let's go ahead and play with this. So if I take this out and pull that out and I go to set, yeah, okay, so it just turned to so now it thinks it's midnight. So, okay, let's go and actually set the time now. I didn't set it out of the box because it looked like it was right. I didn't see the date down there. So what time is it? It is 11:35 a.m. So let's go up to 11:30. Is it still 11:35? Yeah. And it's almost 11:36. So let's get it there. Okay. There we go. Okay. So there you have it. Yeah, I mean, it's not that I mean, I guess it is sort of visible, but honestly, at least in the lighting, I didn't catch the date. When you look at this, it's like front and center. It's right there. Same thing here. Black with nice white, at the 4 o'clock. Much, much more visible. So I think I would ding it on that. It's there. I mean, if you know now that you know where to look, you squint and you're like, oh, okay, I can see it's the 22nd. Yeah, I mean, for $200, here's the thing. For $200, you're getting a company that's been around since the 1800s. And they didn't farm it out to China and just keep their name on it. It's still a Swiss-made watch, so it's a legit Swiss-made watch. And for $200, I think it's a decent watch. You got a stopwatch. It's going to be accurate. It's quartz. Throw a battery in it every 2 or 3 years. The lume is okay. It's not an awesome watch. I mean, obviously, I'm going to go, if I said, well, between the two, if I can only have one, which one am I going to have? I'm going to take the Luminox or I'm going to take the Victorinox. But this is a $535 watch. That's a $485 watch. This is a $199 watch. But for people that are on more of a budget, but you still want a dive watch, you want something that's Swiss Army, you want something that's Swiss made, and, is a decent watch in its own right, I'd wear that. I'm going to wear that. That's actually it's a nice enough watch. I think this is a little more clean and elegant, but you're going to pay almost twice the money. And the downside to this bad boy here is that you may struggle to get it to fit your wrist. You don't have micro adjusts. You have one half link. So you're going to get it, and there's a good chance it's either going to be, this is just a little too tight for me. I wear it, but it's a little tighter than I'd like. But if I put the half link back in, then it's too loose and it flops around. So, and that's the problem. I cannot fine tune it with micro adjusts. I got 3 here, 3 there. Some of my watches have 4. But usually with those micro adjusts, with the 3 slots, 3 or 4 slots, you can dial it right in to where it's perfect. And that's the downside when you go to this. Yes, it's a nicer band. It's solid links. It's got milled and machined. It's much more classy. This is a higher end bracelet. But you may buy this watch and find that you can't get it sized to your liking. That's always the downside to those kinds of things. So this one, while it has a definitely cheaper bracelet that isn't as nice, it is nice enough. There's nothing wrong with it. And it works well. And, you can get it adjusted properly. At least I was able to be. When you have micro adjust, it's almost impossible to not have it be adjustable to find something that works for you. So there you have it. The other Swiss Army brand. Everybody knows Victorinox. Some people know Wenger. I mean, back in the day, I actually preferred some of the Wenger knives to the Victorinox knives. I like their can opener better. Their blades were a little bit taller. Sometimes the tools just seem just a tiny bit thicker. And to me, they just felt a little better. I preferred the Wenger, a lot of the medium, Swiss Army type knives. That's what I had in high school. My best friend Paul, at the time, in high school, he had a Wenger. So that's what we carried. I remember one day we used the screwdrivers to take the screws out of in the library during study hall. We took the legs off the chair, off the table, just loosened them, and then my friend Dennis came in, did what he usually did, was throw his bag, and boom, hits the table. He throws his bag on the table, and then boom, the whole table just collapsed on the floor, and everyone was like, "What the hell just happened?" And Paul and I were just sitting there giggling because we took all the screws out and just had them rest, the tabletop resting on the legs. Anyway, yeah, when you're dorks, that's what you do to amuse yourself in high school. So, but anyway, that's the other Swiss Army brand. The box was nowhere near. Again, Victorinox is a step up. This was definitely, more premium. The knife is more premium. But it also more than doubles the price. And the thing is, you look at the more expensive Wenger knives, or the watches, and they're up in like 300-ish range, 350 and stuff like that. Victorinox just barely starts at that point. They run up now into like $1,300, $1,400 for some of their pro models and stuff. So there is quite a big of a price difference. But as far as a watch goes, if you compare it just to, itself, just judge it on its own merits, it's a nice watch. I'm going to wear it today. I think that's a cool looking watch. I think the blue would be good, but I've got so many other blue, my Seiko, my Citizens, I've got my Orient, I've got so many blue dial watches. I think the next watch I'm going to get is going to be a Tissot C-Star 1000 in either a ruby red or an emerald green dial. That's a 45 mil dive watch, 300 meter water resistance for about $525 to $595, depending on what color I get. I looked at one the other day. It was really nice. But there you have it. So I've got Victorinox, and then I've got Wenger and Wenger. And they're both very nice. So if you can't afford the Victorinox, I didn't know they still made these. I like the idea of a Swiss Army watch to go with your Swiss Army knife. And then I saw them like, holy shit, they still make some of these. And they got a bunch of different models. Wenger's got several models. I'll put a link to their website. I'm like, who knew? I just knew the company got bought out and they still carried some of their knives, even though it was under the Victorinox brand, but they were still made by Wenger in the Wenger factory. I had no idea they still made some luggage and a bunch of the watches under the old Wenger banner. And I'm glad I bought one. It's a nice enough little watch. So there you have it, folks. Everybody, hope you enjoyed. Hit like and subscribe and have yourself a fine afternoon.